Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk. May 18th, live from Saudi Arabia, and we will be live on the Pain Game YouTube channel with all the lads around the table reacting as the biggest fight of the century takes place. And you can watch it as well on DAZN. I'll put my link for the pay-per-view in the description below. Use our link if you're going to watch the fight. I really appreciate it. And if you haven't already, like and subscribe. Now on with the prediction, because it seems like this is one of the hardest fights to predict for the boxing community I've ever seen. And I think it's because we've got two of the most unique heavyweights to ever be in the fight game. And what I'm going to try and do on this prediction is take it as far as I can with what the data suggests and make that little leap into what is the most likely outcome. Not what I want. I know I've done that in the past. You all know I wanted Ngannou to win, for Christ's sakes. I love the guy. But this one, I'm going to try and be more honest, less biased, and just say what I really think. In terms of pre-fight experience, Usyk is more used to fighting bigger guys who are similar to Tyson Fury in terms of size than Fury is used to fighting people like Usyk. And I feel like that is a slight advantage for Alexander Usyk. And Usyk is a southpaw, which again makes him more unique to your average heavyweight. And I feel like in terms of pre-fight mood, the pressure between the two of them is more on Tyson Fury. He's the one who's never stopped praising himself since the day he picked up a pair of gloves. He's the one who is the true heavyweight. You know, he could never have fought as a cruiserweight. So he's the bigger man. He's the one that keeps saying to everyone who will listen, this man is not big enough to beat me. I am too big for him. And by the very fact that Fury is the bigger man, he is the one who was more under pressure to beat the smaller man. And also for me, this is more legacy defining for Fury, because in terms of narrative, Usyk is already the undisputed cruiserweight champion of the world. He's already solidified for that alone. The fact that he then came up and beat AJ should never have happened. He's already exceeding expectations and gone above and beyond what he really should have been able to do for the size of him. And for Fury, there's been a lot of criticism over the level of opponent he's faced in terms of evaluating his legacy. Yes, he fought Klitschko. Yes, he fought Deontay Wilder. But that resume is missing a lot if he want to be called the greatest of all time, which Fury calls himself, especially Usyk and AJ. And he needs to get through both of them to be considered the greatest heavyweight of his generation. And as Big John Fury likes to say, men meet before mountains, and this is one of those mountains he needs to climb. Now, they're both undefeated, which is an amazing thing to say. The fact that they've had so many fights and neither of them have taken a loss, it's outrageous. It shows how good they are. But who's came closer to losing? Because that's an indicator right there, isn't it? Well, Fury was almost stopped by Deontay Wilder, and a lot of people think he didn't actually beat the count in the first fight, and that fight was a draw. So that was close as fuck to a loss, right? Even though he outboxed Wilder, he was seconds away from not getting up in time and losing that fight. He was dropped twice in the Deontay Wilder 3 fight inside one round. Rocky moments. The Otto Wallen cut could have been stopped by some referees. That was a hairy fight for him as well. Then you've got the most recent fight where Francis Ngannou dropped Tyson Fury and on one of the judges' scorecards won a decision against him. Those have all happened in fairly recent times. I'm not even going far back when he got dropped by Cunningham years ago. So Fury has flirted with defeat. Alexander Usyk hasn't. People will point to when Usyk got dropped by Daniel Dubois in their fight. Obviously, it was a low blow. That wasn't a legal punch. But even still, it wasn't a close fight either. Usyk won virtually every minute of that fight and then stopped the guy. You know, let's say if Dubois was roughing him up, was getting the better of them as some of the narratives are, well then Dubois would have finished the job off when he got back up. He didn't. He got dominated. And other than that illegal blow that didn't even count, there's nothing. Oh, he could have looked better against Chisora. Yeah, that doesn't mean he was even close to defeat. Fury has came close to defeat. Usyk has not. That's not my opinion. That's the data. I say that, one of you lot in the comments will fucking mentally do the gymnastics to make it wrong. But that's what I can see. And the Francis Ngannou fight especially is a bad look for Fury, right? A guy in his first ever boxing match against you gives you a night like that. And then he goes and gets destroyed by Anthony Joshua in 2 rounds. Anthony Joshua, the same man who your opponent outboxed for 24 rounds. It's just not a good look for the data. And I know boxing maths don't mean that because he beat him and he beat him that equals that. I get it, but it's just not good. And it's funny because people like Simon Jordan make excuses for Fury and go, well, he didn't try against Ngannou. Maybe he could have tried harder, but even on his worst day, that should never have happened. Francis Ngannou should not be beating you on one of the judges' scorecards and dropping you when you don't even put a dent in him. As the heavyweight champion of the world against a guy who's never fought before, I don't care if you haven't tried, mate. You should be able to roll out of bed with a hangover and do better than that. Worrying signs. And that's the data, not an opinion of why it happened. It just shouldn't have happened. Full stop. But I think Jordan Jordan's a Fury fan because he actually then discredits Usyk's win against AJ by saying, well, AJ just gave him that win. Did he really? Could AJ have been better prepared? Absolutely. But was AJ in that fight trying his absolute hardest? And unlike Tyson Fury, always fit and strong, always in shape, and always giving 100% inside that ring? Absolutely AJ was. And he tried for 24 rounds and he got outboxed in back-to-back fights by Alexander Usyk. And the excuse for the second fight was, well, he gave him the first one, and because he did that, he didn't feel like he could mentally win in the second one, so he gave him that one as well. And it's that mental gymnastics that I think we just can't do when we're predicting this fight. We've got to look at what we actually see and know. Making excuses, it's what you want to happen, and I've done that before. So let's talk about who has the best wins. Tyson Fury's best 2 wins are against Klitschko and Deontay Wilder. Against Klitschko, Fury says, I didn't get touched, which is true to some degree. Like, he really didn't take a lot of punishment at all. He was evading punches very well, but he wasn't making him miss and making him pay in devastating fashion. He wasn't thoroughly outboxing Klitschko the way Alexander Usyk outboxed AJ. And let's not forget, someone else went and beat Klitschko not long after Fury, and that was AJ. And that was AJ at a point in his career where he was raw and young and not as good as the AJ that Usyk beat. Now you could look at the Wilder fights and say that's a very good win. It is a very good win. Even the Klitschko win's a very good win. I'm not taking anything away from him. But again, in 2 out of those 3 fights, you hit the deck. And Joseph Parker just beat Wilder. So again, that takes a little bit away from how good is Wilder if we're grading the win. I think if you look at those fights, Fury did less damage to Klitschko than Usyk did to AJ and took more damage from Wilder than Usyk did from AJ. Usyk's win over AJ was of a very high level of opponent in the most clean way of all of the wins we're discussing. So that is the best win. AJ has 1 defeat prior to that and he's avenged it. Now, if Fury is to beat Usyk, there's a few things I think he needs to really take into consideration. Boxers often just like to try and box well, and if the knockout happens, it happens. They don't go searching for it, because often that's when you get caught yourself. But if you go in there with Usyk with that attitude and just think, I'm just going to box with him, and if he goes, but I'm not just going to try and force it, I don't think that's going to work. Alexander Usyk does not make enough mistakes on his own for you to capitalize on them. You have to force them. And in order to force that to happen, you need to take risks. And that's what Anthony Joshua didn't really do in that fight. Or he didn't do it enough. Usyk is a thinking fighter. And in order to hinder that ability, you have to put him into a state of chaos. Now, the problem with that is people don't want to do that because that takes a lot of energy. And you have to put yourself out there and really go after him. And if you don't get him out of there within that window, he has got an unbelievable gas tank. And that's where he takes you to fucking school. And that's exactly why AJ never fully pulled the trigger. And the closest he actually came to pulling the trigger was in round 9 in the second fight. So here you go. This is round 9. AJ lands a couple of nice hooks. And this is where AJ really starts letting his hands go. But the problem is everyone's getting excited in the crowd. But what they don't realize is not a lot's landing because his head movement, his footwork. He's a smart fighter, Usyk. And you can see he's really trying to put a dent in Usyk now. He knows he's not got long left, and he's going after him. And AJ is a quick, powerful, athletic fighter. This is a great shot, because you see how many of these are just brushing off the gloves. They're not landing enough. It's very hard to hurt this guy. And you see this look in AJ's eyes right now of, I spent a lot of energy in that round and I didn't get the rewards for it. And now I'm in trouble. Because those last 3 rounds, as we've talked about in previous videos, are the Usyk rounds. No one beats him in the final 3 rounds. It just doesn't happen. And actually, you'll see in this round, you see Usyk, round 10, and he is just pop, 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 circle out. Do you know one thing I do want to put to rest as well? This right hand from Anthony Joshua on the chin of Alexander Usyk. This whole thing about the smaller man not being able to take the power. This was in round 10. Bang. Usyk walked into that. This guy's got a chin on him. People need to factor that in when they think Fury's just going to decimate him easily. I mean, look, could it happen? Fury's a big bloke. But let's not act like Usyk hasn't shown he's got a chin, because he fucking has, like. AJ is getting lit up like a fucking Christmas tree to some degree here, like. And this is in a round where he took a massive smack, Usyk. The point being is, if you want to beat Usyk, you have to commit to a game plan of getting him out of there before the end, in my opinion. Winning a decision against him is really hard. He throws more punches than you, so he will rack up more points than you. And there's no way Fury is going to be able to throw as many punches as Usyk. This is solid maths here. That's not my opinion. All facts. I'm not saying it's impossible for you to beat Usyk in a decision. It could happen, but it's not the most likely outcome given the fucking numbers we've got. And because Usyk is a pace-setting fighter who basically dictates the pace by how he keeps on you, stays throwing a consistent amount of punches, you have to interrupt that. You have to disrupt his flow, his pattern, his game plan. And I think a way to do that is to start fast and hurt him early. That's got to be a commitment from Fury in order to change the direction of how this fight goes immediately, because Usyk sets the tone. And that requires confidence in your cardio to go out there and go, right, I'm going to go after him here quickly. And Lennox Lewis, the last undisputed champion, said that's exactly what he would do to him. You've got to go after him like he did Cunningham, that wild style, chasing after him, back your chin and back your power. And Fury's been working on his power with the Kronk Gym, so now's the time it's going to have to come in handy. Bring in the leaning on him like he does with other fighters. It's going to be harder because Usyk's going to be moving a lot, but if you do get the chance, lean on him and work the body. But also, I do think that this idea that Usyk's body is susceptible to shots in terms of being weak is overstated. I've watched him take hellish body shots from Anthony Joshua and Daniel Dubois and be fine after the low blow from Dubois. Saying he doesn't like it to the body, no one does. I think in all of these fights that against big punchers, he's shown he can take a body shot, actually. And I don't actually think that Fury's the hardest puncher Usyk's been in there with. But mixing it up couldn't hurt. 350 amateur fights and Usyk got dropped like once or twice to the body. And people are like, well, he's weak. 350 times he got in there and once or twice he got a body shot that hurt him. He was fighting the best of the best at Olympic level. And we're saying that he's just like a fanny the minute he gets touched in the body now. It's just the narrative, man. It's just not accurate to what we've seen, is it? Yeah, he may not be quite as strong in the body as a chin, but to say it's weak, I don't think that's fair. But I do think Fury has to make it a dirty fight. I don't think he's the better boxer of the two. I think he's shown he's got that fighter in him when he had to get up close to Deontay Wilder. The way he walked down Cunningham, high guard, protecting his chin while then just clubbing at him and eventually getting the job done. He's got to make it an ugly fight like that and hope that he lands that killer shot on Usyk to really slow him down. But he's got to be willing to give all of his energy up to do it. If you're saving gas in the tank for later, you're never going to fully commit to the level of a game plan that takes to actually beat Usyk. You're just not going to be cleverer than him, in my opinion. Unless it's a lucky punch. But I don't think it's sensible to back yourself based on a lucky punch. You have to force it with a guy of this level. This is a higher level guy than Tyson Fury has ever fought before, in my opinion. Now, if we're looking at ways Usyk can win, well, for a start, Fury's just got a massive cut on his eye not that long ago, which has obviously reopened the cut that Otto Wallen gave him. How did Otto Wallen give him that? Well, he's a southpaw. And the damage to that right eye is exactly what happens if you let a southpaw get his backhand off. And as a southpaw, Usyk's got one of the best backhands in the business. So I'd be firing that as a piston straight at that eye. If you can open that cut up early, it's going to make life way harder immediately for Fury. Fury likes to feint, but he's done a lot less of it lately. And I think in terms of his cardio, you want to test that immediately because yes, he's trained harder for this fight than he did in Ngannou. But is that good enough to keep up with Usyk's cardio when Usyk is feinting him? And I think he should be feinting him very early on, getting him guessing, applying pressure, getting Fury into the panic mode as early as possible. Don't let him feel comfortable. Put the pressure on immediately. Usyk usually does that anyway, to be honest, so I would expect it. And Fury will probably be trying to lunge in, to grab a hold, to lean on him. You don't want to fall into that trap. You've got to keep those feet moving at all times. And again, something Usyk does anyway. I think understanding the range as quickly as possible for Usyk is really important. However, that's something he gets very right very quickly. And I think if Fury is slowing down and Usyk does catch him, I think Usyk needs to go for the kill. Because Fury's used to being in there with bigger guys who, yeah, they can hurt you if they can land, but they're often not fast enough to land, and they're predictable because Fury's quite clever at judging the shots. These shots will be more unpredictable, and if he does catch Fury, he needs to keep going and put the pressure on him, because Ngannou didn't do that. He let him off a bit. Other fighters have let him off. Deontay Wilder's not got a great gas tank compared to Usyk. As much as Usyk does not have the power of those guys, he can put more punches together and accumulatively damage Fury into a potential stoppage here if he just puts his foot down when the moment comes. Like, I think if Usyk wins this fight, it's a lot more of an accumulative amount of damage where Fury's waning in energy and the energy levels of Usyk are just too high. He keeps catching him with these little shots and potentially drops or stops Fury. Most likely a decision, but I actually think a stoppage is very possible here for Usyk. Fury, I think, requires a bit more luck because I just don't rate him on the same level as a skillful boxer, but I do accept that the power should be with Fury. So you've got to go after him, catch him, and if his legs go, hope you can just capitalize and get him out of there. You kind of got to create your own luck in that sense, you know? Get him backpedaling, hope that you just see his chin up in the air and boom, catch him with one shot and change this course of this fight. Because if you don't do that, I just think Fury's probably going to get outboxed. And a lot of people think Fury's just as good a boxer as Usyk. They think he's just as technical. I don't agree. I can't say that when you've just put on that showing against Francis Ngannou. How can I possibly predict you to beat Usyk when Francis Ngannou just beat you on one of the judges' scorecards? That would be mental of me. I'm not saying people can't believe that Fury can win, because we've seen on his best day, Fury can beat anyone. But it doesn't feel like the most likely outcome after that shit. Is it possible? It's possible. It doesn't fucking feel likely. And look, maybe Fury didn't train and all the excuse makers are right. But it wasn't just in that one fight against Ngannou that I thought Fury had slowed down. I thought he looked slower against White. I didn't think he looked quick against Chisora. I didn't think he looked great against Wilder in the last fight that they had. This is like 4 fights in a row now where Fury has not looked as good as he used to. And maybe he was just complacent on all 4 of them, right? He'd already beaten Wilder, so maybe he wasn't motivated. He'd already beaten Chisora, maybe he wasn't motivated. Wonder why the fucking fights were made. Like, Dillian White used to batter in sparring all the time, and Francis Ngannou's an MMA fighter, so you should beat him anyway. Maybe Fury was just not motivated. That is possible. But you don't see Anthony Joshua and Alexander Usyk turning in performances where you look physically worse. Mentally is one thing, you can have differences in performances. Even though he looks good physically before the fight, I just can't believe it until I see it. I've got to go with what we've been saying. Like, Anthony Joshua's work rate has never been questioned. Do you not think he worked his bollocks off in that second fight to beat Usyk? I'm sure he did, and it wasn't enough. And he's always been fit and strong. Even physiologically, AJ has got great explosive power to catch a clever technical guy off guard. Kind of like Ryan Garcia did to Devin Haney. He used his power and his speed to overcome the technicality of Haney. Even with all the power AJ has, we watched the demolition job of Ngannou. He couldn't do that against Usyk. And I know people say, oh, good big man beats a good little man. That's true when all things are equal. And a lot of people seem to think they are very similar in that they can both evade punches well, they're both technical boxers, and Fury's just bigger, so therefore he should win. But they're not equal in my opinion. They're not even close to being equal, in fact. Which is why Fury's been picking all these fighters he's been fighting. I think he knows they're not equal. I'm going to tell you now what I think the deciding factor is going to be, because it isn't actually going to be size. It's going to be movement. And a lot of people for a long time have said, Fury moves like a middleweight. He moves really well for a big man. And what you're going to see in this fight, in my opinion, is not a good big man beats a good little man. What you're going to see is a guy who moves well for a big man versus a guy who moves extremely well at any weight class as a boxer. Fury moves well for a big man. Alexander Usyk is one of the greatest movers in the history of the heavyweight division. And that will be the deciding factor, not the size. Because yes, Fury is bigger and stronger, but Usyk is quicker, fitter, and most of all, more cleverer. He's more intelligent. I really believe that. I think people have overrated Tyson Fury. I think he's had a lot of physical advantages, and although he has some of those on Usyk, he's never come up against a fighter ever in his career who moves like Alexander Usyk. We can say Usyk fought AJ, big man, before, completely outclassed them. When has Fury got in there with a mover like Usyk? It's never happened. And that's why I just can't pick Fury here. Because the data I've got doesn't tell me Fury can beat a guy like Usyk. I already know Usyk can beat a guy like Fury. And it's not that I know Fury can't beat a guy like Usyk, it's just we haven't seen it. But the rest of the data, in the way he's been performing lately, is not pointing to yes. So my final prediction is that Alexander Usyk beats Tyson Fury. I think he's going to be too quick for him, too clever for him, and the size isn't going to matter as much as everyone thinks it will. And I'll tell you what I don't want to hear before this fight even takes place, because I know the Fury fanboys, they love him, and there's so many excuses for Fury. I've been hearing all fucking week about previous performances. Tyson Fury would have beaten when he was in his prime. I don't want to hear that. For Usyk either, because I don't think either of them are in their prime. The fight is happening now. We're going to find out who the better guy is. It's as simple as that. Fury could have made this fight happen a few years ago, but he didn't want to know until His Excellency put too much money on the table for him to avoid it any longer. So he could have had it when he was in his prime. He didn't want to. So whatever happens, this is the result. And even as someone who, I don't really like Fury, we respect him, I admire what he's done in the boxing ring, but the bottom line is, the winner's the fucking winner. And that man is Alexander Usyk. But I could be wrong. That's the beauty of this. Let me know your opinions in the comments below. And is there anything that you dispute with me and my points that I've made? Because what I've tried to do is look at what's happened and take from that. And if you disagree, have I got anything factually wrong, let us know. I do want to hear your predictions. I will be reading them. Appreciate all of the support on the Pain Game YouTube channel. And don't forget, we will be live during the fight on the Pain Game YouTube channel doing a sick live stream with all the boys. We'll all be having a drink. We'll all be hammered. It'll be great. I can't wait to find out who wins this one and to find out who is undisputed champion of the world. I'll see you on the next one.